Hey there, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 2. So you only really need to be watching this video if you missed out on class. Today in the video, I'm going to go through this lesson with you and talk about the notes. And then I'm also going to create a separate video that just talks about your 1920s project so that if you need help with the project, you can go back and look at that. So let's just get through these notes real quick. So our focus today, remember we're in the 1920s now. Last week during the ACT, you learned about the struggles between old people and younger people, religious and non-religious. So these like divisions that were kind of being created between these different generations. Today, we're going to talk about consumerism and technology of the 1920s. So when the 1920s came around, we experienced or see a big economic boom. Things are going really, really good. And that's for a number of different reasons. Number one, there's increased productivity. That idea of the Industrial Revolution coupled with the invention of Henry Ford's assembly line really means that the United States can produce more than they have ever been able to produce before. The second reason that we have a good economic boom is that there are some government policies that are put into place that help out the US economy. That includes the fact that there are low taxes to be paid. There's very little government interference in business. We had some trust busting that happened in the last unit that we talked about. And so that's kind of settled itself out now. And there were also high tariffs. So a high tariff means that they put a tax on imports on items coming into the United States, which makes those imported items more expensive, which means that it's more likely that people would buy the goods made in America, thus helping out the US economy. The third reason that we have an economic boom is because of the growth of energy technology, oil, being introduced and turned into gasoline, and then the use of electricity means that we've got, round the clock, 24/7 abilities to create all these products that we're making, but also make life easier and better for individuals at the same time. And then the last reason is because the European economy is really struggling. Remember, we haven't talked about it in class yet, but World War I has just ended. And so as a result of that, Europe needs to build itself back up. And so we are able to kind of capitalize on their economy struggling and able to sell a lot of our things at that time. So during this time, all of this economic boom also comes along with the rise of some new industries. One of them being the automobile industry, which is a huge, huge improvement, not just for people's lives, but you got to also think about like for businesses being able to transport things, not having to use a railroad or a horse and buggy to move stuff. Like we're going to have roads and cars and the ability to move things faster. So this kind of helps to end the isolation of rural life. It allows for the creation of suburbs. So people can start living outside of the city and then go into the city for their jobs and then go back out if they would like to. Because remember, the cities being really crowded was a huge, huge issue. So this allows for that space to be had. It inspires a lot of people to do more cross-country traveling. We're going to start to see kind of the invention of like the American vacation, if you will, and like families going on cross-country trips. Route 66 that, has songs about it and gets a lot of attention as a famous road is created during the 20s, and people are able to go out and experience it. Also, as a result of the automobile industry, the economy gets a boost because it requires other new businesses to come along. So, for example, we need gas stations. So that's another business and more people to employ. We need repair shops that can fix the cars whenever something goes wrong with them. If you're going to have people taking trips, you're going to need motels for them to stay at. You're going to need more shopping centers for people to go and get products from. So the automobile really, cars coming onto the scene really, really adds to the changing way that people are living their lives at this point. The other industry that's really big is that we also are now going to be seeing the introduction of airlines. So this is still really small at this point. And in the beginning, they just start realizing that they can use planes to be able to deliver mail faster. But eventually the popularity and the trust in planes starts to grow. And there are some like airlines that open up so that people can actually use it as a form of travel. You've got really popular people like Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart who make transatlantic flights and go across the entire Atlantic Ocean and gets a ton of attention as a result of it. So these are going to be things that are really, really going to help out how we communicate and how we get supplies around the world. By 1928, there are 48 different airliners that are serving 355 cities. So it starts to grow really, really fast. Okay. Other new industries that are really important include the radio. This is going to become the most powerful communication tool and really floods into people's homes in the 1920s. Remember before this, if you wanted the news or anything like that, or entertainment, you would have to read a book or read a magazine or read the newspaper. Now you've got the ability to listen to it. So it's going to be used for news. It's going to be used for entertainment. It's going to be used for religion. And you could listen to a sermon on a Sunday. It's also going to be used for advertisements, which is going to be really important. We'll talk about that more in just a second. By the time we get to 1930, 40%, so almost half of the households in the country have a radio. And that number is just going to continue to explode more and more as time goes by. But back to that advertising, that's going to be the other new industry that is going to be happening. People need to get more products, and we need to get those products to more people, and we need to try to convince people to actually buy those products. And they're saying, like, listen, let's start using more advertisements, both print advertisements, which I'll show you some in a second, but also they would do it on the radio as well. They would actually hire psychologists to think about what they needed to do to appeal to people, to really kind of try and get in the brains of the consumers and convince you to buy that good, that you were going to need that product. So some of those new products that were being advertised include the following. So electric razors, disposable tissues, so like Kleenex. We often kind of take that for granted now. I mean, you used to have to carry a handkerchief and use it over and over again. So Kleenex is now a thing. Refrigerators that can be plugged in because of electricity, stoves, frozen food, home hair dye for women that wanted to like bleach their hair blonde. That was very popular. Vacuums, washing machines, deodorant, thank God for that one, mouthwash, cosmetics, and the radio. So this is just a handful of like big things that we kind of take for granted today, but this is when they start coming around. Like it's only been around about 100 years that we've had access to these items. Had we been in class, you would have participated in this question. So we're just going to skip over the questions. I'm just asking, what kind of impact did you think that these different items would have on the population, and which one you actually think is the best of the inventions listed here? Continuing on though, let's take a look at a couple advertisements. So in class, again, we looked at these ads and I wanted to ask you how these ads were different from today. You should notice just the sheer amount of reading that has to be done on them. Today's ads are like big, bold words and then poof, you're done. They were actually like trying to almost tell stories or give you the background about this stuff. And so advertisements weren't as quick as they were in the past. Here's an advertisement for a refrigerator and then an advertisement for an oven. Both of these have in common the fact that they are appealing to women, trying to make moms feel like this is what you need to have in your home. And then you can see one for some soap that's supposed to wash away fat, and for some cigarettes that say that you should try to avoid that future shadow. Like if you smoke, you'll be less likely to eat and snack, so therefore you'll be less likely to gain weight. So both of these ads demonstrate an interest in looking your best during the 1920s. It really starts to take front and center stage at this time. So when people are going out and buying it, because the economy is doing so well, they were able to make these purchases. There was about a 35% average pay increase that took place. The annual income average rose from 522 to 705, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but back then that was a lot of money. It also, because of the advertising, started this mindset of everybody needed to keep up with everybody else. If Susie and her husband down the street got a new refrigerator, then I need to get the new refrigerator too. And so I needed to have all of the cool new stuff just like everybody else did. And those advertisements really made me feel like I had to have them. And also we start to see, because a lot of those items that people are buying, cars, ovens, refrigerators. Most of those items tend to be really expensive items, and they didn't necessarily have all that money in the bank at once. So because the economy is going well, people are like, well, I'll buy it on credit. I'll go out and I'll do that, and then I'll use a payment plan, and then I'll be able to pay it back. People trusted doing that because the economy was doing well, and they would pay it back with those installment plans. This, however, is later going to be an issue as we get into the Great Depression in the 1930s. So that kind of brings us to an end. It's a pretty quick set of notes. What I want you to do now is there's going to be another video where I talk to you about your project. And the reason I'm putting it in a separate video is because I want to make sure that everybody has the access and the ability to know as much as possible about it without having to watch this whole whole set of notes. Other than that, you have the option of either working on your project after you watch the project video, or working on your test corrections. And if you're watching this because you were absent, make sure you remember to fill in that lesson demonstrated form down there at the bottom. And other than that, that's it. That's all I got for you today. I will see you tomorrow, and we'll talk about our next topic of the 1920s. Bye, y'all.